Hi, I'm Bramble Benefica, and this is how to survive and thrive in a challenging future. So, what can we be looking forward to in this future? Hyperinflation, food and water shortages, violence, and increased surveillance. And obviously, this hyperinflation can impact the global economy, leading to scarcity of goods and increased prices. The surveillance could be by the state or private corporations through technology. There would be possible societal breakdown with more food and water shortages, especially in less stable areas, and heightened risk of violence, social unrest as a result of inequality and government mismanagement. Increased privatization and fewer regulations is another possibility. The rise of corporate monopolies, especially in the food, energy, and tech sectors, affecting everyone's everyday lives. There may be a reduction in government regulations, leading to more unchecked corporate power, loss of workers' rights, and environmental degradation. And lastly, the political shifts that may lead to more barriers for everyone who isn't a rich white man in the face of an increasingly authoritarian, possible oligarchic government system. The growing inequality and political divide and how it impacts the ability to resist and survive in a changing society is hopefully what I could possibly help you with today. Now, this is something that hasn't just happened. Things like this have happened in the past, and one of the groups that have resisted are indigenous people. Some of the things that they do is land stewardship and sustainability. They practice sustainable agriculture, preserving their land, and they use their resources by viewing it as sacred ecology. They also utilize the land as a renewable resource by crop rotation, preserving soil quality, and using natural fertilizers. Some of the things you can look up are permaculture. This is one of those things that try to work more with nature. Some of the ways we can culturally resist, just like how the indigenous people have in the past, is the use of oral traditions such as storytelling and art to preserve culture, language, and collective identity amidst colonization. So, as times have become more and more rigid and conservative, continuing to tell your story and create art and resisting in that sort of way is one of the many things that you can do to continue resisting. Obviously, we can do more active and actionable strategies like land defense movements and protesting and resisting government and corporate land grabs. And some of the other things that you can do, especially when things become more and more expensive, is learning more about herbal remedies, especially ones that have been passed down through generations. And there are several books and courses and certifications and things that you can get and use when things that are possibly looking more and more difficult in the future. Community-based health systems that are self-sufficient and not reliant on external medical or pharmaceutical systems are something you can also explore. Other ways you can resist are researching grassroots movements and community organizations that push back against corporate and government control. You can look for some that are currently active in your area and join them. The role of activism, protests, and boycotts are very important right now and in the future as we come to challenge our corporate monopolies that have been established for a long time, but we've kind of become blinded and just bought into these. Some ways to fight authoritarianism is through collective action, education, and creating alternative infrastructures like mutual aid groups and co-ops, supporting cooperative and worker-owned businesses to reduce reliance on monopolies, and the importance of intersectionality and fighting for equity and race, gender, class, and other marginal groups. So again, supporting the companies that are still using DEI initiatives. And of course, you can do legal resistance through civil rights advocacy, lobbying, and political campaigns. There are a ton of monopolies in America, and sometimes there is no way around avoiding them, especially in certain areas and with certain price points and wages that people have. And so being aware of them, trying to avoid them when you can, but just do the best that you can. In tech, we really have Alphabet Inc., which is Google, which dominates online search and advertising. So if you can use an alternative, recommend it. Amazon, of course, leads in e-commerce and cloud computing services. Meta, also known as Facebook, controls major social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. These companies have faced antitrust investigations due to their market dominance. So, when you're investigating who you want to put your dollar towards, I definitely recommend looking up the current monopolies and all the different brands they own, making it seem like you have options. Some questions to ask are: who are they targeting and why? Their values, ethics, funding, political support. Are they backed by research or third-party testing? And do they have certifications? Now again, not every single person really has a choice of who they can purchase from. But if you were to buy from a corporation and not a local business, you need to be selective and choose products that better align with your values. So again, we can't just be mindless consumers. We now need to be more proactive, and it's so important. Put your dollar where you want it to go. Money can be so important, possibly even more important than your vote. For where the money flows, that's where corporations will go. Some other ways for you to survive and be resilient during difficult times: you're going to want to diversify income if possible and cut expenses. And you'll want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved and put into emergency savings. If you can grow your own food, preserve it so you don't have to rely on corporations. Great. If not, try to support your local farmers market. You may want to have a way of conservation of water and filtration system. Some other things that could be possible in your community is creating mutual aid networks. These build strong supportive networks within your community to share resources, knowledge, and services. This can be in the form of mutual aid groups that provide everything from childcare to food sharing. See what your community needs and either provide it or find someone who is and support them. Some other ways to be resilient against corporations is, again, trying to go more off-grid. So learning about solar power, wind energy, and other renewable energy sources. Investing in solar panels, generators, or battery systems can help ensure you access to energy during power outages or rising utility costs. You may also need to know first aid and knowing CPR, basic wound care. Some other things that you can do is gain urban and wilderness survival training by being able to find shelter, navigate, camouflage, and being able to escape dangerous situations. Some other things you can do is learning to fish and hunt so you can provide free food for your family. Some other valuable skills are carpentry, metalworking, repair work, and crafting. The other skill that'll be very helpful is hacking and cybersecurity, knowing how to protect digital privacy, evade surveillance, and securing communications. Now let's discuss privacy. If you are in a vulnerable population, you may want to increase your privacy So using tools like encrypted messaging apps like Signal or Telegram, or get a virtual private network, or use a more secure email service. You also want to minimize your digital footprint and limit the amount of personal data you share online. You can also use anonymous browsing methods like Tor, T-O-R. You may also want to limit the use of smart devices, whether that's a smartphone, voice assistant, or surveillance cameras. You'll also want to be informed of your rights and how they're being eroded. Educate yourself on constitutional rights, especially aware of free speech, privacy, and property. You want to engage in civic action if you're able to, like voting, engaging in local politics, supporting more progressive candidates, or advocating for certain causes you believe in to help push for these policies to protect the rights of marginalized groups and promote systemic change. You also want to push for regulation and accountability. In times of deregulation and privatization, it's crucial to advocate for stronger regulations on corporations, especially in areas like health, safety, and environmental protection. They need to be checked on their power so they're not going to end up abusing it. So now we discuss some general things that you can do to be safe, to be resistant, and to survive and maybe thrive during this time. But what's their why? Why is science being threatened? The companies can avoid accountability or regulation by casting doubt on scientific findings that may threaten their profit margins. So if the public believes science cannot be trusted, it becomes harder for regulatory bodies or environmental movements to push for stricter standards. So if science is saying XYZ is causing harm, but the companies want XYZ to maintain how much profits they're getting, of course they're going to say that science is lying, that this is all made up. They want to keep their profits. They don't care about future generations. They'll be fine if there's no water or food. When the government or political leaders can discredit science, it becomes easier to control the narrative and prevent criticism of their policies. Public trust in scientific institutions and evidence-based policymaking is a check on power. So undermining that trust helps these leaders remain unchallenged. Media companies that rely on conflict-driven, sensationalist, or misleading content can benefit from fueling public skepticism of science. The more divisive and controversial the issue, the more clicks, views, or attention they get. Undermining science creates a fertile ground for conspiracy theories and misinformation, which some media outlets exploit for profit. These businesses can profit by exploiting people's distrust in mainstream science. When science is seen as unreliable, people may turn to unproven or less regulated alternatives, which can be highly profitable for the businesses that offer them. Hence the unregulated area of supplements. Discrediting science, especially environmental, public health, and social science, can protect the interests of those who benefit from an existing flawed system. If people lose trust in science, they are less likely to challenge systemic problems like economic inequality, environmental degradation, or health disparities. Now, how can we navigate this new complex world where people are increasingly more divisive and closed-minded and may have trouble even talking with someone who has opposing views? We need to find common ground, be patient, and show empathy to build rapport with these people who have opposite views from each other. We should ask open-ended questions, non-combative questions, and we need to remain judgment-free. We need to avoid direct criticism. Instead, say something positive followed up with constructive criticism, then end on a positive note. We should also suggest outside resources and encourage them to question and seek answers independent and normalize any self-doubt. Next, we're going to talk about how to navigate propaganda. Look for emotional manipulation. If a message is designed to make you fearful, angry, or patriotic, it may be shaping your emotions rather than informing you. Look for repetition and slogans. If a phrase is repeated constantly, it's meant to override critical thinking. Look for us versus them mentality. Propaganda often divides the world into good guys and bad guys. Reality is usually more complex. Next, cherry-picking facts. Information is presented selectively to fit a narrative, leaving out contradicting evidence. Next, they may appeal to authority, using experts or leaders to justify claims without real evidence. And lastly, you want to look for false equivalency, comparing two things that aren't actually equal. Hence, both sides are equally bad. The next thing you should look for with propaganda is you should never trust a single source. Instead, you should compare. You'll want to compare narratives to spot inconsistencies, especially throughout different mainstream media. So going through CNN, BBC, Fox, etc. You can also look for more outside views, other countries reporting on another country's media, or someone who is more centrist versus right or left leaning. So, it's really good to look at foreign press. How does the U.S. report a war versus how does a neutral country report it? You'll also want to look for data-driven sources, so look for raw statistics and peer-reviewed research instead of opinion pieces. You can try websites like All Sides to compare left, center, and right-leaning perspectives on the same issue. Now, here's some questions to ask yourself when it comes to propaganda. Who benefits? Look at the corporations, governments, lobbyists, and elites behind the message. Who funds the media outlet? Who controls the narrative? So, are there a few powerful entities that shape public opinion? And then you'll want to check the media ownership, such as media bias or fact-checked or open secrets for political donations and lobbying influence. And if it's possible, look at official documents such as declassified government files, leaked reports, or FOIA requests. You can also look for eyewitness testimonies, direct sources, whistleblowers, and independent reporters. And then again, try to find data instead of relying on summaries. Look at the actual numbers. Now that we discussed propaganda, how are we being manipulated? So these are some ways that you can tell if you are being manipulated. You feel pressured to act immediately without questioning. The message makes you feel afraid or insecure. If you don't do this, you'll suffer. It plays on your identity. Good patriots, religious people, real men do this. Recognize this guilt, shame, as tools and not arguments. Ask yourself, do I actually believe this, or am I afraid of social consequences? Manipulators frame reality as either or, hiding the real options. Research alternative solutions. Most issues have nuance, not extremes. The same slogans or phrases appear across different media, politicians, or influencers. What are they trying to use this slogan for? What are they getting from it? Why this message? The message is repeated constantly to make it feel true, even though it is not. Dissenting opinions are shut down instead of debated. The message keeps changing when previous claims are proven false. Someone keeps saying new conditions to justify their position. They demand you provide proof, but ignore any evidence you show. If opposing viewpoints are suppressed, ask why. If information is removed, censored, or labeled as dangerous without clear reasoning, it's another manipulation tactic. Only one viewpoint is allowed in mainstream discussion. Experts who question the narrative are silenced or ridiculed. Now, how to counter that? Look for whistleblowers, independent sources, and banned content. Ask, why is this being suppressed instead of debated? Try to be objective when viewing these banned sources and try to figure out for yourself by using critical thinking, why is this being banned, who's benefiting, and who isn't. Now, if you see the experts agree, but they don't name or cite them, or they say trust the authorities without allowing question. Also, you can look for credentials are used instead of actual evidence. And again, check who funds and benefits from the experts' claims. Research if experts in the field actually agree or if dissent exists. Lastly, if sudden scandals are media frenzies that shift focus away from serious issues, this is trying to confuse us and get us to look somewhere else and be distracted so that they can do what they're wanting to do without the oversight and scrupulation. Now, these are some of the ways that we can navigate these difficult times as possibilities of whether it's oligarchy, authoritarianism, fascism. It could also be the other end of the extreme. You could be in a communist country. Either way, whether it's far right, far left, there's always someone ruling, taking away people's freedoms when we're no longer more centered. But the best way to make change is to call and try to manipulate the figureheads we have within our reach, like our governor and councilmen, by saying you won't vote for them if they don't do XYZ, whatever is going on currently. And of course, if you have the right to vote, vote for the specific people that you believe in that will make change. Donate money to their campaigns, and you can even campaign for them. Fortunately, we don't have too much power, but we can vote with our dollar and go out and vote when we can and raise our voices and urge them to do the right thing. I hope this helps you and inspires hope and courage within each and every one of you, or brings at least some contentment in this time of chaos and uncertainty.